Hello, Dawn. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. You?
Yes, not too bad. Not too bad. It's just the two of us again tonight.
It is. So a big hello to Adam, who isn't with us tonight, but is promising to be back with us next week and update us all about where he's been and what he's been up to over the past few weeks. So I hope he enjoys his spa break over the next couple of days. Well deserved.
I hope he's going to treat us to a spa break for, hosting all these alone. So we're doing well.
Yeah. So good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Caring View. Housekeeping first. To click subscribe using the bell. I don't know where it is. Please comment and ask questions, especially of our amazing guest this evening from the Rights for Residents, which we can share and we can share live. And just to remind everybody, all our views are our own and not a representative of our employers.
So what's been happening this week, Dawn? What's been the big news? I think probably booster jabs has been quite a big thing on the media and obviously hitting care homes at the moment.
Yeah, so I think there's been the podcast and obviously Help on Channel 4.
Yes, I really enjoyed Help.
I loved it. I also loved your running commentary through the night.
I know.
So if anybody wanted a spoiler.
I know. People are like, I haven't watched it. And I was like, oh, God, I hope I haven't ruined the whole plot for you. But do you know what? I thought it was Barbie, the manager, and the bit at the end where she took the resident. Other than that, I thought it was spot on. I thought it was such a good document. Well, it wasn't a doc, but like a soap drama. I thought it was really good.
Yeah, I think I was really anxious to watch it, if I'm honest, because obviously everything that I had been through and the care team that I was working with at the time had been through. So I was really, really anxious, and I laid watching it thinking how, apart from the interview, because I've never interviewed a care assistant like that before in my life or in my career. I've never goaded anybody into taking a carer's job. I thought it was amazing, but it also brought back loads of memories. But I think what they were trying to do at the end was that there was a lot of antipsychotics prescribed by GPs because they weren't seeing people, and I think that was the way he wanted to go. And then it was the last 3 slides that kind of did it for me at the end about the PPE and who was coming into care homes, and I thought it was great. I've never known anybody either to take a resident out of the care home and hide them in a caravan. But I think that was the premise of it, was in respect of the antipsychotics and her not wanting him to have them just because the GP had prescribed them because he was trying to get out. Because I saw that all the time. I had residents that were used to being out with their families and doing things and were trying the doors, and things had changed for them. So, yeah, I thought it was really, really good. And I think Jodie Comer should definitely get a BAFTA. Definitely.
Yeah, she was really good. I did wonder whether or not they had to make it slightly unreal at some point so that they didn't have to class it as a documentary and still then obviously as a drama piece. So, but yeah, I thought it was really good. I thought it was really strange watching it because it was almost like deja vu because you knew almost what was going to happen. But I think they covered all the really big topics really well.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, we did get claps, and there was the clap for carers, and there was things like that. But I think some people didn't realise what actually happened during those times. And I know people have spoken to my husband since watching it and said, oh, is that really what happened when, Dawn had COVID in her care home? And he had to say yes. And I think now it's brought to light and to people's attention that care homes massively struggled. And I think, if anything, it could be used as a massive training resource, especially that 20-minute scene. So apparently that 20-minute scene where Kenny was unwell, she did in one go. And apparently the tears at the end were actual real tears because it was filmed and it was so intense in the way it was filmed. So, yeah, I thought it was really good, really good.
Yeah. No, I do as well. So. What else is happening then? I see there was a... Oh, go on.
Go on now.
Oh, no, I was going to say I saw on Twitter that there was a big review of social care with all the major people from social care. Yeah, it had nobody I reckon. Well, 2 people that I recognise, but nobody with lived experience, no relatives, no everyday managers. Yeah, God knows what the review was all about.
So apparently it was a care sector reform summit. That wasn't very widely advertised that this was happening either. So the first I heard about it was this morning, when the pictures were shared. When I looked on social media, I could only recognise one person actually. I couldn't recognise anybody else. I was really upset and frustrated because he had announced when he first took over that he would be including families because he'd deemed them experts by experience, and he'd be including those that live in services, yet he's had his first summit and there wasn't any of those there. Well, they didn't appear to be around that table. I think my other frustration was they're all sitting around a table. I think somebody pointed out on Twitter there was no masks, the windows weren't open, there was no social distancing, yet we've got COVID deaths rising, infection rates rising. There was some hand gel on the tables, but masks were strewn everywhere. So I think, come on, people, set a tone.
Yeah, especially for a publicity press shot, you'd think they'd be on it, or somebody would be on it. But yes. So, yeah.
And of course, it's World Alzheimer's Day.
Yes, it is. Yes.
So I've been sharing bits and pieces on Twitter in respect of the young onset dementia. And there's 42,000 people living in this country with Alzheimer's at the moment that are under 65. And I think sometimes we don't represent young onset dementia enough. So, yeah, big things been happening in the news and lots been going on. But I think the main premise has been the booster vaccines, which you can't book one, I don't think. I think you've tried, haven't you, Mark?
Yeah, I've tried numerous times. I've tried contacting the hospital that I had it at, tried contacting the Department of Health, just for a statement, but all you get told is wait for the NHS to book you in, which I have said to them. It's obviously not in any kind of logical order of who had the vaccine first, because I know that in the UK, the care home I was managing was one of the very first in the country to have the vaccine. But I know they've not been offered the booster. I've not been offered I don't expect to be offered the booster because I'm not front line anymore, but not that they know that. So I don't know kind of what order they're prioritising or who they're prioritising, but I don't know anybody that's had it yet. I haven't seen anybody. I know a few people have been contacted to say that it'll be the Pfizer and the flu jab rolled into one, which I think is causing some concern, definitely in the elderly care homes, because I think a lot of them didn't have the Pfizer, they had a different jab. So I think quite rightly there's obviously concern about mixing the doses or whatnot. So it'll be interesting to see how that rolls out and what the guidance is.
Yeah, I think I've had several manager colleagues contact me over the last few days asking me whether it's likely that this is going to be mandatory for care workers. So I think some guidance would be really good at the moment for managers to understand whether everybody has to take the booster. I don't think that's been added at all.
No, I think they're waiting for the JVCI, aren't they, to give some of the research behind it. But I think from what I've seen, definitely on the care worker forums, is a lot of people feeling kind of, and I feel the same in some particular way, is the ethical, because there's obviously millions of people across the world that haven't even had one vaccine, and yet we're rolling out our third one. So I can understand that from a point of view of giving it to the other countries first. But
well, we will wait and see what comes about.
Yes, we will. Right, who have we got tonight, Dawn?
We have the amazing Rights for Residents. So we have Jenny and Kate. I think Mark's now adding you in.
Good evening. Good evening.
To talk about their amazing journey. So obviously Rights for Residents was set up a year ago. Is that right? About a year ago? And they've had an amazing journey. And we wanted to go through that journey from the beginning, because you obviously delivered your petition last week to Downing Street. So tell us all about it, ladies. Introduce yourselves and tell us all about it.
Kate, do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first?
It's your thing.
So how far back do you want to go? To the very beginning?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's been so much publicity over the petition and the protest. I think we need to go back to the beginning, because there were some people that I know that said to me that they didn't even know that this was still going on. So I think that definitely from the beginning.
Okay. So yeah, if we think back to, I think it was September, Kate. I think it was September.
End of August, beginning of September.
Yeah, kind of end of August, beginning of September last year. Basically, people will know my mum, Jean, was in a care home, and, you know, she had Alzheimer's. And, you know, to be honest, between myself and Diane and my other two sisters, we just honestly, Dawn and Mark, we visited mum all of the time. It wasn't one of these situations where we put her in a care home and it was like a half-hour visit once a week. Like lots of other families, you know, we literally went there. Myself and Diane had our own business at the time, so we were able to take time off work and make sure we organised our own schedule around visiting mum. And so literally, one of our family would be there from, say, you know, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon till maybe sometimes 6, 7 o'clock at night. And, you know, we do that probably 5, 6 days a week between us. That's what we did, because we felt so bad that we couldn't look after her at home. You know, her needs were just too great, and we always felt really guilty about that. And then, you know, we were coming to terms with that, and then of course the pandemic struck and we were locked out. And like everybody else, we understood for the first 3 months that initial lockdown, we were really upset, and we wondered how mum would get through it. But we thought, no, she's resilient, and she has a great relationship with the carers, and they were brilliant. She'll get through it. So when the first lockdown ended and things began to be eased, you know, for everybody else, we thought, oh, well, it won't be long. You know, soon they'll start opening up and we'll get some access. And then it went on and it went on and it went on. And we got to end of August or September, and we thought, what the hell is happening? You know, nobody is going to let us in, quite frankly, by the looks of things. And we had just a really awful window visit this particular day that sparked the campaign. Myself and Dan drove to the care home, and it was the usual window visit at the time. It was warmish weather, and the window was open, you know, the usual 2 inches or whatever. So we were started to approach the window, and mum was on the other side. The carers had brought mum in and left her there. And she's, you know, before all this, she was such a smiley, happy person. Honestly, she was just so full of life, even with the dementia and everything. You know, if she saw us, her whole face would just light up. And we approached the window. She'd steadily been getting worse and worse. And she just literally, honestly, she just broke down in tears, and head was in her hands, and she was crying and we were crying. It's quite hard actually even to talk about it now. So we rung into the care home and asked one of the carers, who's brilliant, if they could come and comfort mum, because we couldn't go in. And I mean, I think unless somebody's been in this situation, they just could not understand that sense of absolute powerlessness to, you know, to just comfort somebody. But this carer was wonderful with mum, and she calmed her down, and it went on to be a really traumatic visit. Mum said she was sad and it had gone on too long, and the usual, come in, why can't you just come in? So we just drove home, myself and Dan, that afternoon, and I says to Di, there's got to be something. We can't just accept it. You know, what we're going to do, wait forever? We need to do something. And then the next day we started phoning around our local TV stations and, you know, radio stations. And we went on there, and then we set up a Facebook group, and people began to join us. We had a huge response from the TV and radio pieces that we did. And that was kind of that was how it started. There was no plan. There was no. We thought we'd just kind of do it for a few months. I remember saying to Di, it might take a few months, but we're going to have to do it. I mean, and look where we are now, 12 months on. And the campaign is huge, but it's taken a toll on lots of people who've been involved in it. And, you know, I suppose the plus for us, Mum's gone now, as people know, she passed away in August. But I suppose that one of the big positives is that, you know, through doing it, we were able to see Mum. So that's the kind of overview of the journey, if you like, and there's lots of points along the way. And here we are now, you know, 12 months on. The situation is better for some. For many, actually, I have to say for many, it's a lot better. But as we know, for some people, access is still appallingly limited, you know.
So are you finding that people are still limited with time or date? Kate, what's your experience been like visiting your mum?
So we're I suppose pretty similar to Jenny. My mum's been in a care home for 6 years. She's got very advanced dementia, and from March to May last year, I just sort of accepted it, and you know, as we all did, the whole country went into lockdown, and you virtually couldn't leave your front door. So you sort of try to battle with a bit of Skype, but Mum's totally non-verbal, totally immobile. You know, she was diagnosed 12 years ago with Alzheimer's, so she's a long way down the journey. And you know, come June, July, you sort of think soon it must be our turn to open up and have a look and, you know, say hello. And I just remember I think I got 3 visits between the beginning of August and the beginning of October. I saw Mum 3 times, and that was in a garden. I was sitting 5 meters away from her, in full PPE. And I got 30 minutes at a time every 3 or 4 weeks because that was the booking system. And then the shutters just came down, and I spent the next 7 months literally looking at her through double glazed doors, because the doors didn't open. There was no way of communicating. There wasn't an opening window or anything. So I just basically stood there and looked at her, which is horrific. I don't think I will ever be able to describe that feeling. It really was horrific. And then, you know, and all you can see is Mum just lying in her sort of cot chair type thing, just shouting. She makes these random dementia noises, which you will be familiar with people who are, you know, advanced dementia. And then March the 12th this year, so exactly 365 days later, eventually I was allowed in to see her for 30 minutes supervised, and hold her hand. Yay! Which was amazing. And again, that was being once every 3 weeks until things changed in June, July, the last lot of changes in the guidance. And so now I am classed as Mum's essential caregiver, so I can go when I want. I can go into her room. I have to produce a negative lateral flow test. I have my oxygen levels and temperature taken on arrival. I put my PPE on, and I am escorted into her room. And I can sit there and I can give my mum lunch. I can be there for as long as I want, and then I'm press the bell and I'm escorted out again. But you know, it's a vast improvement from where I was. But yeah, it's been a very long 18 months. I think basically and I think until you've stood the wrong side of some double glazed doors and looked in, that's, you know, that's probably half our battle. Until you've stood there and looked at someone, you just don't understand what it's like. You don't understand what that lack of communication, you know, it's touch is so important for someone with dementia. But as the campaign has always said, it's not always about old people in care as well. There are many younger people with learning difficulties and whatever. And again, for them, that close contact is so important. But yeah, and anyway, I joined, I spoke to Jenny and Diane at the end of August last year and said, "Oh, do you have a Twitter feed?" Which they both went, "Huh?"
I said, "What's that? What's Twitter?"
You didn't quite say what's Twitter, but I think you went, "No." Anyway, and yeah, I think the rest is history, really. Yeah.
So there's obviously been the delivery of the petition. So tell us about last week.
Wow. Well, to be honest, there's a bit of a history to the actual protest, because ever since we started the campaign, our members and also the team, to be fair, Kate, have always wanted to do a protest, you know, and people have always said, look, you know, we need to really shout about this, and we need to, you know, take to the streets and make our voices heard. And we were always really cautious about having a protest for various reasons, one of which, to be fair, was for many, many months, obviously restrictions were in place, and we were worried about holding a demonstration and people didn't respect the social distancing rules, or they didn't wear masks, and we thought, you know, if we're seen to gather and transgress any of these, you know, restrictions, we just shot a hole in our argument that we are keeping very safe, and, you know, we are as safe as anybody else to go into care homes, and we wouldn't put anybody at risk. So whilst we thought our members on the whole would obviously abide by all of those things, we couldn't control that. So we resisted it, to be perfectly honest, until the restrictions were completely lifted. And then we thought, well, if we don't do it soon, we could be facing further restrictions in autumn. So a window came, and we also worried, you know, will people really turn up? You know, will they support it? So we decided to go for it. And honestly, I can say it was just an absolutely amazing day. It was absolutely fantastic. It was a day, you know, full of emotions. People were like really happy to see each other, because we've all been talking virtually on our Facebook page and on Twitter and through emails and messages. But it was also quite a sad day for many people as well, because amazingly, a really high contingent of people who attended the protest are people who have already lost their loved one in this awful situation. Some of them, you know, as far back as when the restrictions were at the very worst, and they literally watched their loved one waste away through windows and pods and things like that. And a lot of those did come. And it was, you know, it was really very hard for those people, but they came, and I'm just absolutely full of admiration for people like that, who are still wanting to support everybody, you know, else. So it was a great day, really great atmosphere. People were so supportive of each other. And Ruthie Henshaw came down, I think, as you know, she's our ambassador. And the noise of people down there was quite, it was just phenomenal, honestly. When we actually went to deliver the petition, you couldn't even hear yourself think. It was so loud. I think Kate will concur with that. And as you know, we have these blue T-shirts, and everybody was wearing those, and it just looked absolutely fantastic that everybody was united in that. And it just felt like a really, really, you know, positive day, to be honest. And it was something that we've been building up to for a long time. So I personally feel that the timing was right, and I do feel it was a really successful day. And the Shadow Minister for Care, Liz Kendall, came down to hand in the petition with 5 of our groups, so that was really supportive as well. So I was absolutely dreading it, and didn't sleep for about 2 weeks before, because I'm worried about people getting run over by taxis and London buses, or I don't know, all sorts of. I was just catastrophizing all the time about what might happen, because you have to be liable for people's safety. And but on the day, it was brilliant. Everything went really well.
Yeah, I was really gutted that I couldn't join you, but I completely echo. I think the noise was probably Kate starting off everybody chanting, because I did see a few videos of that. But it was just great on Twitter and Facebook just to see, you know, my news feed was just you guys in your blue T-shirts with your placards, and yeah, it was great to see that all over my news feed and across the media, and you know, just raising that awareness. It was a really good thing to see.
Yeah, I have
Going...
can I give a shout out to Alice, who is one of the core team, and she, for personal reasons, couldn't join us in London, but took over control of Facebook and Twitter for us, and literally, well, I'd send her a text, say, right, I'm about to start live streaming, so she came off one and went on to the other. Or none of us know really what we're doing, but she just was amazing putting it all together and coordinating it all, and we'd got all the members to post pictures of them all meeting up. So I think, again, that gave them a feeling of owning the day themselves, which was brilliant. And what it was all about, everyone got a feeling of, you know, it's all well and good to send an email or like a post or whatever, but actually to physically go and do something really gives you a sense of empowerment. And it was amazing to see everyone arriving in big groups. None of us have met before. It's the first time I'd met Jenny. I'd met Di very briefly, but you know, to actually, after 13 months, to actually meet each other was very special.
It was just like a sea of blue all over Facebook and Twitter, everywhere you looked. And some of the pictures, and I think, Kate, you mentioned to me in a text message about the sea of blue at the back. And it literally was at the gates of Downing Street, the sea of blue everywhere. It was amazing.
Yeah, I need to share that picture, actually. It's a very good one.
Yeah. I think that's it as well, because it's going back to the timing of the protest as well, because I think the timing was perfect, because we always said, to be honest, Dawn and Mark, myself and Dan always felt that although we've managed to get huge coverage in the media and we're working with quite a lot of journalists and reporters, we always knew that there'd come a time when they'd lose interest. I mean, it's quite hard, as you know, to get anybody interested in stories about care homes or care, whether it's young people, older people, whether it's children. It's just really, really difficult. And so we managed to get a huge amount of coverage, as you know, throughout the campaign. But that interest had started to wane, and that was natural. In fact, we're surprised really that it carried on as long as it did. And so for two reasons, I think the campaign was a success, because, as Kate said, it was something symbolic for the members. They wanted to do it and they felt really passionate about doing it. And they all wanted to be involved in delivering the petition, which was brilliant, which has now got 270,000 signatures, which is a huge amount. But also it was a great way to, you know, reintroduce the media at a time when things were kind of moving on. So, yeah, I think it was a real success.
And I wasn't allowed to do any of my wacky ideas.
What were they?
I'm going to hold those back just in case.
I've just popped the petition link up, so we'll share it after so that people can just click on it easily for you as well. But yeah, no, that's a great amount.
So do you still think now that our visits are they happening more often now? Are people still restricted, or do you think, or is it still managers with the fear factor, or because I've seen a couple of posts about managers feeling, you know, having this control over care homes. Are people actually getting to see their families?
Oh, I think it's a really complex picture now, to be honest, Dawn, because some people, we've just done a survey, which we haven't published all the results yet, because we were so tied up really with the petition and the protest. It's a really complicated picture. For example, on the issue of essential caregivers, we were actually quite surprised with the results of our questions around that on the survey. What we found was, you know, almost 75% of those that had asked to be nominated as an essential caregiver, over 75% of those who'd asked to be nominated were accepted. So, you know, in terms of the essential caregiver, of those who are asking for it, you've got about 2/3 that are having it, but you've still got 3/4 that are having it, and 1/4 who still aren't having it. So I think it's turning now into more of a minority situation. So I do think there are, you know, there seems to be like a hardcore of care home groups and managers that To be honest, it does almost feel quite sinister, I have to say, because, you know, when you've got so many who are doing it and managing it safely, it is quite hard to understand now the objections of the 25% or whatever who just refuse to do it. And I'll be honest, as a relative, it's really, really hard to understand what's going on in the minds of people who are still very closed about this kind of thing. You know, when we started the campaign was firmly aimed, as you know, at the government, because the the guidance was so restrictive. It was difficult to follow. It was contradictory. It still is to some extent. But to be honest, there's plenty in there. If you want to make visits happen, there's plenty in there to make them happen. You know, it's not like it was before where the emphasis was more on keeping people out. So I personally find it very sinister now that some care homes are just not opening up. And I think more should be done to tackle those, because I feel like, you know, what's happening in those care homes, you know, if you're not prepared to let people in and that care home's become a closed institution, what else is going on behind there? But one of the things that myself and Diana are really keen on, and we do allow discussion on the Facebook page, but one of the things we're not into, and I think you know this, is that we don't brand all care homes, you know, with the same bad press, because as you know, Penny was instrumental in starting off managers groups, of which you two and you know, also Donna and Adam were part, you know, and lots of managers were all in favour of visits. And we certainly think there are some amazing managers and there's some amazing carers too. And one thing that we don't really tolerate is, you know, general sort of care home bashing, which we do get sometimes. But, you know, I make no apologies for stamping on that, to be perfectly honest, because I just think, in my opinion, there are good and bad in every single sector. And I don't want to focus on those people who are doing really awful things. We do need to target them. And we do need to put pressure on them. And we want the government to tackle those care homes. But I think we've also got to celebrate the good people that work in care homes and all the things that those people have been through since the start of the pandemic, horrific things, which I don't know if I could deal with, you know. So the group dynamics and the discussion is... it can be difficult at times, and we're not always going to agree on everything, you know, within the group, but we're united on one thing, and that is that, you know, we want to tackle the visiting situation and that it's not good enough at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what frustrates me is, you know, Kate has said that she has to wear full PPE. I'm assuming, Kate, that your gloves come out of a sterile box and your apron comes off a sterile reel of aprons before you put them on, and no one else has touched that box or aprons before you go up into your mum's room. It's that kind of thing as well that I find quite frustrating, and I've openly voiced is it necessary? And when I started visiting last September, initially I did, you know, people were wearing gloves and aprons and the full works. But I think, and then it kind of got to the point where I'm asking her daughter to pull out a pair of gloves from the same box I did as I walked in, or an apron off the same reel the carer did as she walked in. So it kind of defeated the object. And I've seen some things on Twitter about relatives being sprayed down before they go in. Have you seen that, Mark?
I've not, but I did see it on. God, it must have been about 6, 7. I think I was on my notice period of the care home, and I saw it on Facebook that somebody, it might have been on the Rights for Residents group, that somebody, had been with a misting machine, had been sprayed with a misting machine before they entered the home, and I couldn't quite believe it. But
no, so I think I still think, the fact that Kate has to wear PPE now to go and hug her mum, I think you're not allowed to hug?
Oh my God.
Depends on the carer on the day.
Well, Yeah, I think you're absolutely, I think you're right. I think what is said publicly and what goes on. I mean, we had in Mum's care home, we had a fantastic manager in the home that we moved Mum in the 4 months before she passed away. And she was just, you know, like you guys, realistic, compassionate, sensible, take precautions. But at the end of the day, for God's sake, she let people live, you know. I mean, it's about the quality of life as well, not just the quantity. I didn't want my mum to pass away without ever seeing my face again. You know, I'm sorry, but I didn't. And we had discussions and allowances were made, you know, in situations. And I think that's it, isn't it? It's about trying to strike a balance in all these difficult situations, isn't it? And not to be too rigid about things. And of course, there are risks, but you know, we're all taking risks. There's no risk-free solution in any of this if we're going to live with COVID. I'm not suggesting, and I mean, our campaign was never about just throwing the doors of care homes open, especially when there were restrictions, and just letting all and sundry come in. But you know, now there are no COVID restrictions on anybody else in society, and I think we have to address that disparity now.
It'll be really interesting.
The last change in the guidance was when 19th of July, and there has been no date set for another review. And actually, well, I think you've seen the comment on Twitter, Dawn, from Lord Bethel, who said there's no date for review. They're not going to review it. This is it. I mean, how that could be acceptable. I was just going to come back to something Jenny was saying. So, I mean, my mum's within one of the big care groups. And so the carers in her home are amazing. And I know that I am getting over and above what, and I have to be careful here, what I think head office would allow. Because I also know people who have loved ones in care homes within the same group who are getting nothing like I'm getting. And it just makes no sense. You know, it's why, I think a lot of it's down to the luck of who you have. Well, A, how loud you shout, and B, who your manager or area manager is. In my case, I think he's done it just to shut me up. But I would as well. But
so it'll be interesting to see what your results are. So Dawn and I ran a poll on a few of the manager forums that we're on, just asking about how many were doing, for essential caregiver status, unlimited visits. And it was really 50-50 of care homes that were and care homes that weren't. A lot of them came back and said that they have essential caregiver status, but it's timed, or that people still need to book in. It's once a week, that kind of thing. So, I still think there's a lot of work to do. We've had a lot of comments come in. So I'll bring them up on the screen. So we've got John, who said that he's got essential caregiver status, but he still has to make appointments.
But that's what I don't understand. How can you have essential caregiver status, but make an appointment and only go for a limited period of time?
Because it says it within the guidance.
Yeah, but the guidance is open to interpretation, because I read the guidance, Kate, of,
I know.
Well, that's essential. So that person's essential.
Yeah.
And they should be coming in the home as much as possible because they're essential to that individual.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think, you know, this is the problem I think that we're seeing now is we have, like I say, 75% of our members that have asked to be essential caregivers are, you know, they are essential caregivers, but each home has its own definition of what that essential caregiver is. But as you've just said, Dawn, if I was a relative, I'm afraid I wouldn't be accepting that kind of thing, time visits. Either you are essential and you're accepted as such, or you're a visitor. So what are you? And whilst I think, you know, there's a lot wrong in the guidance and there's still a lot more to do in terms of the government tackling this, and certainly, you know, the regulator has a role to play in this. But I also think that, you know, we as relatives, and I know some people are pushing and pushing and pushing and still not getting anywhere. But also in our survey, only 50% of people who responded have actually asked to nominate themselves as an ECG. And we were really surprised at that, you know, so we need to sort of dig a little bit behind that. So there is also a barrier in terms of people, I think, still thinking of the essential caregiver as somebody that goes in and maybe offers personal care, or somebody who has to go in every day, or because we've had people say, when people have written to us and we've said, why don't you apply to be an essential caregiver, because that would solve some of the issues. And we get responses saying, I don't want the responsibility, or, well, I don't want to visit every day, or I don't want to offer personal care. And there is still this confusion as to what an essential caregiver is, which I think stems from not the last guidance, but the guidance before, where it was sort of structured in that way. It was definitely, interpreted that way by many managers. But I mean, now that it's just supposedly for companionship, you could provide that, weekly, or, twice weekly, every day. It just depends what's essential for your loved one. But I do feel also that relatives need to push very hard. They shouldn't have to. We get people saying to us all the time, yes, but Jenny, I shouldn't have to do that. And my argument is, well, it's up to you. No, you shouldn't have to. But if you want this, unfortunately, at the moment, you're going to have to, unless we can make things change. Because, I just feel if it was me and I was in the position of a relative now, and I knew that so many people were getting access and so many people were, being nominated or accepted as essential caregivers, honestly, I would literally go down to that home, and I'm afraid I would just be demanding it, and they'd have to remove me, because I just wouldn't accept it. It's that simple. But I know people are different. And I also feel that we still need to keep going, because people shouldn't have to do that. And hopefully, in the future at some point, they won't have to. But in this interim period, I think people need to push very hard for it, especially with, cases rising. We're almost, in that really bad situation where we're going to have flu and cases will rise even further. And if we have restrictions, if people are not asking for it, their loved ones are going to be isolated again, just like they were before. So people really need to do this now.
I also think it's an awareness that it's there.
Yeah.
People just don't know. I mean, I see it quite a lot. What's an essential caregiver? What does that mean? Where do I find it? How do I get it? And again, on Twitter, I spend obviously life on Twitter, but I did a thread, and I've been through some of the visiting policies for some of the very big care homes, and the vast majority of them don't even acknowledge essential caregiver in their visiting policies. And so if it's not there, if all you're told is that you have the option of an outdoor, a screened, a pod, or maybe an in-room visit for a nominated visitor, which I hate the phrase anyway, you're not going. They're not promoting essential caregiver. They're not promoting. Some are. There are some who are, and at least it is there. But it's just not promoted. It's not. It should be right at the top. You can be, or your loved one can have, and then list all the others. It shouldn't be the afterthought and or completely forgotten, which it is by most of the bigger groups. That is.
Maybe we should write a policy between us and send it to all the care homes.
Yeah, probably.
I think that's
top.
I think that's a good idea. We could ask people if they want to, if they're willing to sign up to it, and they put a big poster on the front of their door or whatever that they're welcoming, ECGs. I think, Dawn, one of the biggest fears, Mark, that I know managers do, they did have at the beginning, when the concept of ECGs was very first introduced, and I know there was this fear of being, overwhelmed with requests for people who wanted to be ECGs. And as you know, and we know, that's just not borne through, because certainly, as Kate said, there is sometimes a lack of awareness. But in the home where Mum was, the manager was very good and often sent out requests asking people if they'd like to be ECGs, and please ring up, we can discuss it, and these are the things that you can do, and you'll be able to come in during an outbreak. No, hardly anybody. And I know that's happened in quite a lot of cases, and we've discussed it in the managers groups between ourselves as well, when people have opened up reluctantly and they realise that they won't be overwhelmed, And so that just hasn't happened. So again, I'm not really sure where that fear is coming from, because even pre-pandemic, I mean, relatives weren't beating the door down wanting to come in. It's just a fact, isn't it, of care homes, that they aren't overwhelmed with visitors.
I think as well it's the trust thing, because I think a lot of relatives were locked out in the very beginning for those period of months, didn't know what was going on, didn't know what was happening. There wasn't the greatest communication as we've had feedback from relatives. So now maybe there are more relatives coming to the forefront because they've had that period of time where they're thinking, well, why can't I come in then? And, we didn't have anybody apply for essential caregiver status where I was employed previously, but that's because nobody had to. It was within the policy as the guidance changed, but we were pretty flexible with families. We had somebody that used to come in at 7 because she was a nurse, and she used to come in and have breakfast with her mum. We had other people that came at weekends. We trained all the staff to do testing. There was always adaptations to everything we could do. But I think that the fear factor in managers that I saw at the beginning, and I completely understand, because we had a horrendous time, and me and Mark were talking about help earlier, and I could completely resonate with every single aspect of those 20 minutes. And that went on for us for a month. But that had to get to the point where we do have to live with this virus, this disease. This isn't going away. We're now thinking booster jabs, and we've got the winter coming up and the social care crisis looming. Or actually, we're in one. And we've got flu, chest infections, colds, coughs, neurovirus. I was at my local hospital on Sunday, and there's a big sign saying neurovirus is circulating the community. Everything is coming back. And I think that as far as Gloria's law, I think with the ECG, with this kind of status, it needs to be promoted across the board so everybody's aware, because if not, I can just see care homes locking down again.
Yeah. I think as well, Dawn, it's true, because in terms of people like, for example, the CQC, even if we ever get this law passed, even if the government do accept that there's a need for legislation to, protect people's rights in care to have visits, I think there'll then be the issue of, monitoring compliance even to that. I mean, the CQC, I have to say, I'm sorry, I know it's public, but they've just been absolutely hopeless and appalling. And they keep saying to us that, they're just not hearing from people. They're not getting many cases. They even made a statement in the paper last week that they've done a survey, and as far as they're concerned, 95% of care homes are allowing visits in line with the guidance. And, we know that is just far from true. You asked earlier about whether people are still getting visits. We are still hearing that people are getting 20-minute visits every 3 weeks for one family, just one family. Even now, despite the government saying there should be no restrictions on the number of visitors. I'm not saying it's happening in the majority of cases, but there's still a large minority of homes where that kind of thing is going on. And for the CQC to say they're not aware of it, I mean, when we've asked them how they're monitoring it, they say that when they do their inspections, they're asking care homes whether they're allowing visits. I mean, come on, why aren't they asking relatives if they're getting any visits in that care home? It's just nonsensical. And so,
a definition of a visit.
Exactly, what's the definition of a visit? So yes, they're doing visits, every 3 weeks for 20 minutes for a family. And that's what we've said to them, they need to be drilling down a lot more. And all they have to do is, during their inspection, they could randomly ring 10 families. How long does that take? It's not that, it's not a huge commitment if they're already doing an inspection. It's not rocket science. We're not asking them to do something that's going to take huge amounts of resources. It's a relatively simple process to monitor that. But I think even if we manage to get legislation, there will still be those issues that will be coming up.
Just looking at the comments again, we've got a good question that's come in. Just quickly before that, I'm going to bring Trudy's comments in, which is a bit worrying. So her mum's carers don't wear gloves or aprons. I like to think that they wear them at some point in the shift, but she also said that she is still sprayed down, obviously, when she's visiting going back, which is concerning. But onto the question that we've had, which I thought was quite good, and it's what we've touched on. I don't know if it will all show, but it's from Chris, and it says, are you worried about backtracking regarding visits as we head into the winter? I'm concerned that some of the progress might be stalled or undone. Yeah, I think for me, I think out and about, you know, there's so much flu in my local area, let alone, I worry that it's going to kind of revert backwards, as much as I would hate to see that. And I think schools are rife, aren't they? I look at my daughter's school and there's cases left, right and centre, and cases are back on the rise. But what do you two think?
I think in terms of the visits, that's one of the things that really worries us, and hence why we took the opportunity to, do the protest march, because as well as asking for this essential caregiver status to be enshrined in law, one of our biggest fears is that all these visiting opportunities are possibly going to disappear, because all of the factors you've just mentioned are going to lead to cases increasing. When cases increase, unfortunate restrictions aren't proportionate. So, the population have restrictions, but care homes are virtually become prisons, and you can't get in there. So all these care homes who are now opening up to all these different visiting opportunities, a lot of the visiting opportunities are outdoors, for example, and the visits out. Obviously, people are enjoying taking their loved ones for visits out. All of those opportunities will disappear when the weather changes, and with that, of course, with cases increasing, I expect there will be some new guidance to care homes, and we could very well see a reversal in a lot of the so-called freedoms that people are now enjoying in terms of visiting loved ones in care homes. So I'm very fearful for for the next few months. And I think one of the things in terms of our campaign is that many of our supporters, I think, naturally have become quite complacent because they are having visits, or they have become an essential caregiver of sorts. Some a proper full essential caregiver, as an extension of the care staff, and others, as you say, a kind of essential caregiver. But it's whether or not those things will hold if the situation changes. For example, we know that we could be hit with another, variant of concern. And if we are, then I can't see many of the visiting situations we've got at the moment, carrying on, in all honesty. And I think people are in for quite a shock, if and when things do change, at how quickly the visits can be taken away again.
Yeah, I agree. I think the care homes still are under quite restrictive guidance anyway, and it's only one small step backwards to lock them up really quite tightly again, and it is worrying. Certainly I know that Mum's Care Group doesn't necessarily recognise essential. I think they call it essential visitors, and I keep asking for it in writing that it will still be recognised if there is an outbreak, or if there are further restrictions, and that commitment hasn't quite come through yet. But we'll see. But I won't be stopping asking for it. But it is. I think it is a huge concern for many that we've got so far, and it's taken since the beginning of this year, really. When was it? March, that the first sort of proper opening up for most of the homes, not you guys, but for most of the homes started again. That's when we saw the real turn, beginning of March. And it won't be long before we go back to that sort of 30-minute supervised visits or whatever it is.
I think I suppose we've been really warning people, particularly our members, that to apply for essential caregiver status now before the doors close again. And also, if you have got it, to get something in writing and get something put into the care plan, because without that, you're on very shaky ground, to be perfectly honest, if you don't do that. So I think there's a window of opportunity for people now, if they haven't done it, to try and get that sorted out, to push for it and to get it in writing. It's not perfect. We're not ignoring all the other bits and opportunities and all the other parts of the guidance that need to be tackled. But in terms of our campaign and our own feeling, the number one thing for any resident is that they have access to at least one member of a family who can come in during an outbreak or, period of lockdown. It's absolutely vital. I mean, I know from my own mum, just, even just in those first 3 months when she was completely on her own, the change and the deterioration was just absolutely, it was unbelievable. And my mum's been in a care home for 4 years, so we've seen people deteriorate. Of course, we've seen mum deteriorate, but the speed at which it happened and how quickly she lost all the faculties was just absolutely frightening. And I can't stress enough how important it is for people to get that in place and make sure the loved one isn't left isolated, during what could still be some bleak months over the winter.
Yeah.
And I really do hope people will do it. It's there at the moment, and it's accessible and it's possible. And in most cases, when people ask for it, 3/4 of people who've asked for it have got it. Please, I just say to people, just make sure you get that in place now.
So for anybody watching, Kate, I know you take the lead on communication there. There might be relatives watching thinking, I want to get essential caregiver status. How can I get in touch with Rights for Residents so that they can support me through the process? What would be your advice on how they can contact you?
I would recommend they go to our website, www.rightsforresidents.co.uk. On there, under resources, there are some phenomenal template letters, which will take people through step-by-step applying for essential caregiver. Next to that is if at first you don't succeed. So once you've been turned down, which you may or may not be, there's also the next steps of what you can do to challenge those decisions. And just follow the templates. They are proving, I think people are having success with them. People get in touch with us on Twitter. I happily fling them out there at a drop of a hat. So it's it's just follow the templates and just ask for it. We can't emphasize that enough. It really is so important. And while it's not mandatory, while it's not law, it is in the guidance and it's there to be used. And don't take no for an answer. There is no reason for it to be refused. And we just can't keep saying that enough.
And I think it's worth. Oh, sorry. I think it's worth adding as well. And I know we've touched on it briefly, but there's so many managers that I think are new into post or that just didn't realise. But actually, there's so much support from Rights for Residents for care home managers or deputy managers or anybody that's got to make the decisions with regards to legislation and interpreting it into policies and procedures. And yeah, we touched on, obviously, we used to do the weekly Zoom meetings, didn't we, back in the day, where it was Dawn, Adam, Donna and I, which seemed like, a million years ago, but it's so sad that we're still sat here talking about visits and bits and pieces. But there is support out there, Please do get in touch if you're a manager watching this thinking, actually, I want to facilitate visits or I don't know where to start, because I know Dawn, myself, Adam, Donna, we all share kind of our documentation we had. Kate and Jenny, Diane, they've got other relatives that are, have got information. We can share that. It's just all about working together. And for the people using care services, that's what it's all about. And like Jenny said, to try and stop that deterioration any further. So please do get in touch.
Can I just say as well, Mark and Dawn, one of the things I would say to the managers, because I know you do have a lot of managers watching your show, and I hope that you could reassure them that, certainly myself, Dan, Kate, the team at Rights for Residents, we're all for communication. We are not against care homes, we're for care homes. We're very open people. We are not one of these groups that are screaming and shouting and trying to make enemies. We're open for discussion, and we think that this huge chasm that's opened up between care homes and relatives, and it has, there's no doubt about that. that even in our small group working together with you guys and our team, it's just been amazing. And, you know, we've learned so much from each other. We've shared experiences and we've all been through a horrendous ordeal. And we really do need to start bridging that gap. And the only way to do that really is to work together and to talk and to just overcome fears. And, you know, the most important thing is to just try, I think, to see things from each other's perspective and just recognise that, you know, we've got an opportunity to come together, and I think we should take it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I look back when we were doing the weekly Zoom and we had random managers pop in, and, you know, there was never any kind of judgment about whether people were or weren't doing, you know, it was about, what, have you tried this, or why don't you try this, or have this conversation, or here's the document we use, why don't you take that back to your directors and see. And I remember there were so many people saying, my director won't let me, I really want to do it. And actually, then they would come back 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, and be like, we're doing visits. And that's what it's all about. And yeah, like you said, there is no them and us. And, you know, if people don't want to contact you direct, there's a WhatsApp group that you guys are in, there's managers in it, so people can just pop messages. There's no, I mean, I've never put a message in there and thought, God, I'm going to be judged for putting a message in there. And I post in it quite often when people contact us through the caring view, because obviously I don't use the guidance every day, so I'm not always 100% on what it is nowadays. But I never feel judged by putting something, you know, like what is the guidance, or where do we stand on this, or can somebody, yeah, it's just open, it's supportive. So yeah, if there are any managers that want to join, you know, the WhatsApp group, the Facebook, yeah, please do get into contact.
But it's also, it helped us understand, so when we get questions maybe from our members, if we've heard from you guys what you have faced and what the barriers were, or what you had to overcome and what you've been through, it helps us understand, because obviously I don't want to say it, but we're on the outside looking in sort of thing, and you were on the inside looking out. And actually, we don't know what each other's experiences were. You do, but you don't. And without communication, without talking together, you're never going to get anywhere. And so for us, it's helped us understand and be able to work our way through and be able to relay this to other members of Rights for Residents and say, well, you know, these are what we've heard, the experiences from managers, and this is why maybe it's happening, or this is why this is being said, and that's so important. Yeah.
I think as well, people who are in our group, they perhaps don't realise how many managers are supportive and how many managers have supported the campaign and what's been going on behind the scenes. Because, I mean, the funny thing is, at the beginning, when myself and Dan and Kate started, we were absolutely desperate trying to find somebody who was doing it. And we didn't know anybody was doing it. We just assumed everybody was the same. And I think it was Kate started picking people up on Twitter who were doing it. And we were thinking, oh my God, you know, we can go to the media and we can go to the Shadow Care Minister and we can go for the Minister for Care and say, no, actually, people are doing it and they're doing it safely and it's possible to do it. So I did want to take the opportunity to say thank you as well, because, you know, let's be honest, you were pretty trailblazing at a time when people I know thought you were a bit crazy for doing it.
And I think people forget as well, that's how me, Mark, Adam and Donna actually became friends, and how the Care and View started was through visiting.
Yeah.
Was through enabling that and finding each other on social media, because I know Donna felt the same and Mark felt the same. We kind of felt like we were the only ones at the time that were kind of facilitating things, and then with the warmth of social media, we found each other, and that's kind of how it was born. And then it kind of got bigger and bigger. So I think, I was told I was going to go to jail for manslaughter at one point.
I was about to say, I'm surprised we even found each other through the wave of hate messages about how we were killing residents and being unresponsible. But yeah.
I think we got some, between the four of us, I think we got some quite terrible stuff. So yeah, people did think we were crazy.
Yeah. I mean, we did find others. We did, myself and Dan, as you know, we're like a dog with a bone when we're looking for something or trying to do something. We did find other people, but basically they were just saying, they were kind of doing it on the quiet. They didn't really want it to be known because they were worried about a general backlash, but also a backlash with their own relatives who perhaps didn't want it So there was always the fear of putting your head up above the parapet and saying, look, we're doing it. So I would say on behalf of all those people who are now getting visits, thank you for supporting our campaign, and thanks for supporting myself, Dan and Kate personally as well. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you so much for coming on this evening.
It's been great.
The protest, the petition, your work so far, and hopefully get Gloria's law into legislation. So congratulations to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having us on.
Thank you.
See you soon.
So, Mark, what have we got next week?
So next week we are joined by Jane Mullins, who has a book out at the moment called Finding the Light in Dementia. She's also going to come in and talk about, she's starting a new resource for managers, but also relatives, about upskilling and training in dementia. I had a sneak peek at the advert today, and it is actually really powerful. So I will see whether or not I'm able to share that. But yeah, definitely worth a watch. And I think some of the tips and the tools that she's got are going to be really supportive for everybody, whether that is a relative or whether that is care home staff, managers, deputies, directors. So yeah, really looking forward to learning more.
And we'll have Adam back.
And we'll have Adam back. Fingers crossed, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Okay, well, thank you very, very much again, Jenny and Kate. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Take care, and thanks for having us. Bye.
See you later. Bye.
Thank you again for joining us tonight on The Caregivers. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and whilst you're here, check out some of the other videos that we've got up online. If you've got something that you think may be interesting for us to discuss, or if you want to guest spot with us, then drop us an email to thecaringview@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter, find us on Facebook, all the information is down there in the description box. But until then, have a good evening, stay safe, and we'll see you next week.